Hilchos Yibum Vachalitzah Perek Sheni. The laws of levirate marriage and the Chalitza procedure, chapter 2. Yesterday we learned some of the core issues at the heart of Yibum and Chalitza. The basic scenario: when a person dies childless, his brother has to marry the wife. We defined what it means a child, we defined what it means a brother. We talked about what happens if she's pregnant. Today we move on to the actual Yibum procedure. What does it look like to consummate a levirate marriage? And we're also going to talk about what happens if there's multiple brothers. Which brother has to do the Yibum? And also many other laws that govern the beginning of a Yibum relationship. So, we begin with a new rule relative to yesterday's Rambam. And yesterday the Rambam told us that in order to begin a Yibum marriage, all you have to do is simply go to the woman, have relations with her. There's no need for kiddushin. A usual wedding requires 2 stages. You have to give the woman a ring or some kind of money, and then you can go into seclusion with her, and that's called nisuin. When it comes to Yibum, you just go straight to the nisuin. That's biblically. However, the Rambam begins today, halacha aleph, midivrei soifrim, rabbinically, shelo yavai hayavam al yevimtoi, that a yavam, that's this guy, the brother is called the yavam, the person who's going to do Yibum. This person should not have relations with the Yevamah, with the woman who's waiting for Yibum, ad sheyekadesh oisa bifnei shnei edim bipruta b'shave pruta, till you do a form of consecration in front of 2 witnesses, either by giving money or something worth money, like a ring. V'zeu hanikra maimer. That's called ma'amar. Ma'amar means a word. Usually, in a regular marriage, it's called kiddushin, actual consecration. In the context of Yibum, it's simply called giving your word. Because that's what it is. It's like a verbal commitment with a monetary accompaniment that was instituted rabbinically. Ve'ein hamaymer kaina b'Yevamah kinyan gomer. This act of Yibum consecration doesn't acquire the woman completely, like let's say in a regular marriage you give a ring, you actually acquire the woman completely. By a Yavam, it doesn't work that way. Similarly, if you acquire the Yevamah by doing ma'amar without the consent of the woman, loy asa klum, you haven't done anything. It's a worthless act. She'ena isha miskadeshes ela birtzayna. A woman can only become consecrated by her consent. Uktana min ha'erusin. Now, if this girl was a minor, she was only consecrated to this man. So 2 issues at hand. This relationship was only a relationship of erusin. It only entered the first stage of consecration. Second, she was a minor, and then he dies childless, leaving her to this guy. Ein oisin b'maimer ela midas aviha. This guy can only give the ring, the maimer Yibum ring, to this girl with the consent of her father, like any other minor girl who you cannot consecrate without her father's consent. Halacha beis ukeshem shehu mekadesh es yevimtoi. The same way you have to consecrate the woman waiting for Yibum. Kachu mevarech birkas nisuin ba'asara. It's actually treated like a full wedding. You do shava brachot, the blessings of the wedding. You have a minyan present, 10 Jews, the kosev ksuba, and you should write a marriage document. Kedin kol noisei isha, like the law of anybody who marries a woman. This is the rabbi's addition to the biblical law. Habal yevimtoi v'lo yasa b'maimer. What if somebody doesn't listen to this new law? He simply has relations with his Yevamah without doing the formal act of acquisition before it. Kana kinyan gomer, he has acquired her completely because he followed biblical law strictly. There's no need to redo the act of consecration after having relations. The rabbis will step in, they're going to give you rabbinic lashes, but can't say that you didn't acquire her. The kosev laksuba, and you write a marriage contract as you always do. Now, once we're talking about the relations that acquire the Yevamah, let's define that. Halacha Gimel says that Rambam habal yevimtoi. One who has relations with the woman, the Yevamah. Bein b'shoigeg, bein b'mezit. Whether inadvertently or purposely. Bein b'oines, bein b'ratzin. Whether he was forced or he did it willfully. Bein shahayahu mezid v'hi shoigeg esayanusa. Maybe he was doing it purposely, she was unaware, she was inadvertent or she was forced. Bein shahisa hi mezida v'hu shoigeg anus. She was doing it purposefully, he was doing it inadvertently or by force. Bein shahisa yeshana, bein shahisa bein shahisa era, whether she was sleeping, whether she was awake. Bein shaba aleha kedarka, bein shaloi kedarka, whether he came upon her in the natural way or the unnatural way from the back. Echad hamayra ve'echad hagomer, whether he only had partial insertion or full. Kana, he has acquired her. In other words, at any stage that the Torah recognizes as relations, when it comes to other laws of arayot, of immoral relationships, they all count over here. Though, when does the above apply? He has to have in mind to do an act of relations. The act can be done under force or inadvertently, that it's her, or purposely. But the act that he's doing has to be an act of relations. But for example, let's say, quite an unusual case, but the Talmud addresses it. A person falls off a roof and ends up in the Yevamah. Or he had relations with her in a state of drunkenness. He was so intoxicated that he doesn't recognize anything at all. He doesn't know what he's doing. Or he was sleeping. He has not acquired her. Because in this case, he didn't have intent to do an act of relations. If he intended to release his seed into something else, and he ended up releasing it into the Yevamah, he has not acquired her. Again, no intent for an act of relations. If he intended to commit an act of bestiality, and he ended up inside the woman, the Yevamah, he has acquired her. Because in this case, at least he has some kind of intent for relations, be it relations with an animal. But in the end, the physical act that he's approaching to do is an act of relations. Halacha hey, Yevamah shenisyabma. A Yevamah, a woman waiting for Yibum, gets married to the guy. She does Yibum. And during 30 days, within the first month, she says, you know what? He officially married me, but he never had relations with me. Even if the husband, the Avam, is saying, no, I did have relations with her, v'gersha, and then he divorced her, we force him to do chalitza. Remember what chalitza is the process of removing the shoe. This is a special chalitza shoe. We're going to see more about this shoe later. It has very, very, very precise conditions. But this is a real chalitza shoe. This is actually from an auction house because they sold it because it was an ancient shoe. They wanted it's a priceless item. So we force the guy to do chalitza in this case. Why? Hoyil v'kidem v'gersha beget. Since he already took the initiative and divorced her with a proper divorce document. Which means what? Which means that as long as we don't know for sure that Yibum was done, if he now divorces her and leaves her to marry somebody else, technically she really can't get married because she never dissolved the bond between her and the Yavam. She never actually had relations. So we force him to do at least chalitza, which also dissolves that bond. If he hasn't yet given the divorce document, he's still in the marriage. Then we can force him either way. We can say, look, you want to stay married? You have to go into a room and have relations. Or do chalitza, you choose. And then v'yetzi beget, and then divorce her. But what if he divorced her after 30 days passed? They're already married for a month. And then she wakes up, she says, oh, I never had relations, you should know. We cannot force the guy anymore, because we have to assume once they're married 30 days that natural things took their course and he had relations with her. But we can ask him, just to, clear her of any doubt, do chalitza for her, just in case. And this way, if she marries somebody else, it'll be totally kosher. If he was agreeing that he never had relations, then of course, we force him to do chalitza, because it's the same as within the month as after the month. Bottom line is, you didn't dissolve the bond between you and the Yevamah. You cannot let her get married to anybody else. What if it's the opposite? She is saying, I had relations, let me go. He divorced me, let me go get married to somebody else. And the husband is claiming, you know what? I know I was married to you, but I never had relations with you. So he's trying to mess her up, because if we trust him, then it turns out that she was married to the Yavam, but never actually consummated the marriage, and she can't really get married to anybody else. Here, since she is saying that she was consummated, we don't require any chalitza. Because the husband, we're not going to believe the husband once he already brought her into a marriage. We're not going to just believe him by his word to forbid her to everybody else. So that covers the basic parameters surrounding the beginning of consummating a Yibum relationship. Now let's discuss a specific case of multiple brothers. A guy dies, as in this picture here, and he leaves multiple brothers. Yesterday we were discussing the basic scenario, one brother. What if there's three brothers? Mitzvah al hagadol liyabim oilachleitz. The mitzvah is on the oldest brother to perform either Yibum or Chalitza, either take her in or dissolve the bond through Chalitza procedure. Shenemar, as it says, v'hoya habechoyer asher teleit. This is a fascinating interpretation of this verse. The verse before this, Maybe I could even bring it up on the screen here. Excuse me. Here's the verse before this. This is the verse that describes the actual case of Yibum. Ki yeshvu achim yachdav, two brothers live together. Umeis achad mehem ubein loy, one of them dies with no son. The wife of the dead person cannot just go out and marry anybody. Instead, Yevamah yavay aleha ulekachale leisha v'yibma. The Yavam, the brother that's waiting, has to marry her or take her as a wife. Now, watch what the next verse says. He takes her for a wife. Now I'm reading simply. It will then be the firstborn that she gives birth to. What's the implication here? That means they get married, and now the firstborn that she has, Yakum al Shem Achiv Ames, is going to revive or stand up in the place of the brother that's dead. So now, the way I'm reading the verse, this verse is a continuation to the last verse, that once the Yibum happens, the newborn son will stand up in the place of the brother. However, when you read the Hebrew grammar, Achiv means his brother. It's not his brother, it's his uncle. The newborn that she will give birth to will stand up in the place of the uncle who died, not the brother who died. So this is one of the reasons why the sages interpreted this verse differently. Not as a result of the Yibum, but as coming before the Yibum. Who should do Yibum? V'haya, it will be Habechoyer Asher Teleit, the firstborn who was born among the brothers. Yakum al Shem Achiv Ames, he should be the one to go in place of his dead brother. In other words, if you have multiple brothers, which brother goes first? The Bechor. This is a description not of the situation post-Yibum, but pre-Yibum. Says the Rambam, Shenemar, as it says, V'haya habechoyer asher telei, that will be the firstborn, who will be born, mipi ashmu alamdu, from tradition we learned, she'enei medaber ala babechoyer shaba'achim. We're speaking over here about none other than the firstborn among the brothers. Kilemar, which means to say, G'doil ha'achin, yakum al shem achiv ames, the oldest brother should stand up in the place of the dead brother. The fact that it says that she gave birth, which seemingly sounds like the Yevamah is going to give birth, the sages said no problem. It means who their mother had given birth to first. It does not mean that the Yevamah will give birth to. It's referring to, again, the situation before the Yibum, that the oldest brother should do the Yibum. If the adult, the oldest brother, didn't want to do Yibum, like we saw yesterday, there's no force. Anybody can say, I don't want to do it. He doesn't want to do it. So then we return, or we check out each of the brothers. We ask each one, if neither of them wanted to do the Yibum, we go back to the oldest one and we say, Alecha mitzvah. The mitzvah is upon you. You don't have to marry her, but at least dissolve the bond somehow. Either marry her or do chalitza. We never force the Yavam to get married, to do Yibum. We couldn't force him to do Chalitza, because the woman has to go be free. So you don't want to marry her, you must give her the Chalitza. Amar Hagadol, what if the oldest one said, look, we have a brother who's after Bar Mitzvah, and I also have a brother who's 10 years old. Hamtinu li ad sheyagdil hakatan. Wait, let's wait till the youngest brother becomes after Bar Mitzvah. Maybe he's going to want to marry her. Or one of our brothers on vacation now. Wait till he comes back. Maybe he's going to want. Maybe one of the brothers is deaf mute. Let's wait till he gets healed. Then we can ask him. Maybe he wants to do the marriage. If he doesn't want, then I'll do Yibum or Chalitza. But for now, let's wait. We have somebody that could be eligible. Let's wait for him. We don't listen to him. Current situation is all we take into account. We tell him, the mitzvah is upon you. Either you do Yibum or you do Chalitza. You got to choose right now. Take action. Similarly, on the flip side, what if the oldest brother is out of town? He's on vacation. The younger brother cannot say, listen, the mitzvah is on my older brother. Wait till he comes. We tell the one that's here, you're the oldest here, either do Yibum or Chalitza. That kind of reminds me of like the Makat Bechorot in Egypt, the firstborn son. If there was a firstborn in the house, he died. No firstborn in the house, the oldest kid in the house died. So over here also with the mitzvah, you're here, you're the oldest, you got to take action. Halacha Yud. Yevamah haru'uya liyibum. Shaloi ratza salihis yabim. A woman, Yevamah, looking at the situation, there's no problems. She's all ready to go for Yibum. But she doesn't want to. Just to get the guy mad, or just whatever. She doesn't want to do Yibum. Dina kidin meredas al baila. She is treated like a woman who rebels against her husband. Remember, in the laws of marriage, if a woman just wakes up one morning and says, you know what, no more relations for you, just because I want to punish you. She's called a moreda. She's called a rebellious woman. The court would announce stuff about her. They would reduce the amount of her ketubah payment. She was treated pretty harshly. So here also, if she's fit for Yibum and the guy's ready to marry her, then she says, no, I don't want to get married. We treat her like a rebellious woman. The koifenes Yevamah Vachalitzah. In this case, we force the Yavam, the man, to do Chalitza, because look, she's not going to get married, can't force the marriage. But she leaves without a ketubah. She doesn't get the right to a payment from her brother's estate because the guy wanted to take her, and she's not agreeing. What if the brother left multiple women, like yesterday's case? Kol misha tava hayava mehen liyibum. Whichever wife this Yavam asked for marriage, and she didn't want, he hamayredas. She is the one considered to be rebellious. And he does chalitza and lets her go with no ketubah payment. It's not really fair if you think about it, but that's how it is. The other co-wives who were not asked in marriage, they take their ketubah like any other widow, and they're free to go. Now let's return to this case. If there were multiple men, this is your question from before. The oldest one asks the woman her hand in marriage. She doesn't want this guy. She wants the brother. We don't listen to her. Sorry. The mitzvah is for the adult to do the Yibum, the oldest one. He wants to do it. You got to let him do it. Omar Hagadol, what if the adult said, listen, the oldest one, I'm not an adult, they're all adults, the oldest one. He says, listen, I don't want to get into the situation, it's very sticky, I don't want to get married, I don't want to do chalitza. Look, I have two brothers. Go, deal with them. And one of them indeed takes initiative and demands the woman in marriage. And she doesn't want him. She wants the third guy. And he also wants her. Good news. In this case, she's not considered to be rebellious. By refusing the second brother, that's not rebellious. Why? Because once the oldest brother went away, who he really has the mitzvah, all the other brothers are fully equal. If she wants one of them and he wants her, she hasn't committed any rebellion against anybody. Just go through with it. Let them live happily ever after.
First, they need to do chalitza. They don't need to.
No chalitza, yibum. Not just that. What if one of the brothers was in a different country on vacation? And the woman says, I'm waiting for that brother. He's going to come back and marry me. But this brother, I don't want him. Again, it's not a rebellion because the oldest one left the picture. And we tell this second brother, who's not the oldest, and is now asking her for marriage, we tell him, you want to do chalitza and give her a ketubah payment? Go do it. If you don't want to take that step, she's offering to wait till your brother comes back from vacation. Since you have no law of precedence, you're not older, you're not the oldest, so you get no first rights. And therefore she's in her full right to say that she's going to wait for the other brother. She's waiting, and that's it. We're going to wait for him to come back, and he'll do the next step of marriage or chalitza.
What's the point of telling the second brother to do chalitza? What's the point of that?
We're going to see in Hilchos Tezayin about that. Whenever a guy has a Yibum or chalitza hanging over him, it's a bad thing for him. So she's like waiting for the brother. He goes, no, listen, I'm here. Right now, the obligation's on me. So I want to take action. Halacha Yud Gimel, what if the third brother comes back from vacation? She's waiting for him. She's like, he's going to marry me. And he says, no, I don't want. So we go back to the second brother, the one who asked her in marriage and she doesn't want him. We tell the woman, listen, the only brother who's offering to do Yibum is this guy. And we learned yesterday at the mitzvah of Yibum, according to the Rambam, ideally comes before Chalitza. Any case where we can do Yibum, we're going to do Yibum. Either go into the marriage, or you're going to have to leave with no ketubah like any rebellious woman. Halacha Yudalet kol Yevamah she'amarnu shedina shetachalitz v'lo tisyabim. Anytime we said about a woman that the law dictates that she has to do chalitza and not yibum, of course, she's entitled to her ketubah payout like any other widow. Similarly, if this yavam, this guy, is really not attractive, he has boils or some other kind of disqualifying blemish, we force the guy to do chalitza. We're not going to force her into a marriage with this guy, and she takes her ketubah payout. If she if she developed some blemishes while she was waiting in the wings for Yibum, his field is flooded. That means he's an unlucky guy. Now, he could take her in marriage if he wants, but if he doesn't want, he's going to have to pay out the full ketubah because the fact that she developed blemishes later is on him. Tesvav Yevamah shenadra hana mi Yevamah bechaye baila. Let's say, while this guy was alive, okay, they were married, good marriage. She had said, she got into a fight with this brother, and she said, I'm never going to have any pleasure from you, ever. It was before the whole story began. They were married, happily married.
Like a nether?
A nether. She made a nether. No pleasure from you.
Nasty brother-in-law.
Oisha nadra hana mikala Yehudim, or nothing to do with her brother. She went against everybody. She got mad at all the Jewish people. She said, I'm never having any pleasure from Jews. I'm done with the Jews. So over here, since the problem between them came way before the whole Yibum issue arose, so we're not going to force a marriage. You cannot get married here. There's a neder. You can't have hana'ah. So we force the guy to do chalitza, and she takes her ketubah payment. If she made this vow after the death of her husband, she really didn't want to get married to the guy. So she says, no pleasure from him. We ask, please be kind to the guy and do chalitza. And if he doesn't want, he wants to get married, she is considered to be a rebellious woman. Similarly, if we can ascertain that the reason she made the neder while her husband was alive was to get out of Yibum, it wasn't just to get mad at the guy and not to have any pleasure from him. She was saying it so that if the husband ever dies, she won't marry the guy. We don't force the man to do chalitza, unless she expresses clear rebellion, and then she leaves the marriage, she leaves the Yibum bond with no ketubah payment. Tezayin Yevamah shetava hayavam lechalitza. In the classic case, the man is asking the woman to do chalitza. She says, you know what? I don't care about this bond. I don't want to do any act. I don't want to do chalitza. I don't want to take my payment. I want to sit in my husband's house like any widow. You don't force any widow to do anything. I'm going to sit over here and enjoy my widowhood. Ein shaymin. We don't listen to her. As we said yesterday, this situation means that Hashem is giving this woman to this man. Hashem created that bond. And therefore, we have to ask him what he wants. He wants to get married, chalitza. But something has to happen. You can't just sit there and do nothing. Not only that. She's offering everything. She's, look, I don't want your money. I don't want your support. I'll sit here in the house, aguna. I'll be chained down all days of my life. Ein shaymin la. We don't listen to her. Because the man will tell her, listen, so long as I have this obligation hanging over me, all the shadchanim are not offering me a shidduchim. As long as they know that I'm waiting for this woman to go do something with her, nobody's giving me any more names. Even if he was already married, he can say that. It's possible to marry another woman. Or the Yevamah is going to cause, or not her, but the obligation will cause quarreling in the home. So you can say, look, I don't want your name to be associated with me. As long as it is, I'm having problems. So give me the option of doing something, either Yibum or Chalitza. This is the reason for what we said before. Why the second brother, when he wants to do Yibum, but when he wants to do Chalitza, we tell him to do Chalitza right away, and don't wait for the third brother. Because as long as he has that association waiting over this woman, people are not going to give him another offer of marriage.
By the way, over here, it says after she says Shacharis, the second to last phrase, it says here that, like, it's like the same thing. That not that he will marry another woman, but that they won't give him.
Yeah, since it's possible to marry another woman. Yeah, since it's possible to marry another wife while you're still married. And they're not going to offer him that shidduch while he's waiting for the Yevamah, therefore he can say that, yeah. Yud Zayin. Yevamah shalai hayala al bayla ksuba mipnei shehaysa asura alav. We're going to get more into these cases in later chapters, but think about this. Let's say the first marriage was actually a forbidden marriage. She had married a guy who she wasn't allowed to get married to. In which case, there is no ketubah. The sages never instituted a ketubah in a forbidden marriage. And let's say she's permitted to marry the Yavam. Okay, let's say this was the case. The case was she couldn't marry this guy, but she was able to marry this guy. As we're going to explain in later how that case could be. If he wants to go through with the Yibum, go through with it. But she cannot claim a ketubah payout the same way she couldn't claim it on her husband. The law of this woman with the Yavam, as it refers to the Tosefet, the additional part of the ketubah, will be whatever she had with her husband. Remember, in the ketubah there's two parts. There's the Ikar, the mainstay, 200 for a virgin, 100 for a non-virgin, and then whatever additional money the husband wants to give. So the mainstay of the ketubah doesn't exist here, but if there was any addition, the laws will govern the Yavam as they govern the husband. But if the original husband never wrote her a ketubah, or she had sold it to him, or pardoned it to him, in other words, it was a good marriage. It wasn't a forbidden marriage, it was a good marriage. Just there was no ketubah written there. Then of course, this Yavam, before he takes her in marriage, has to write a marriage contract like any other widow. This woman, the Yevamah, before her Yavam has relations with her, or before he does Chalitza to her, she cannot marry any other man. As it says, this is the basic verse of Yibum, the wife of the dead man cannot go to the outside to a strange man. If indeed she did get married to somebody else and they had relations with her, both him and her get lashes. He must divorce her, even if they had many children. And by virtue of that marriage, she becomes forbidden to this guy forever and to the Yavam who was supposed to marry her originally. The Yevamah the Yavam has to do Chalitza to her and then allow her to get married to anybody else. If she only got consecrated to somebody else, she didn't actually get married, she never became forbidden to the Yavam. The strange man who gave her consecration should give her a divorce. The Yevamah miyabim and the original Yavam can do either Yibum or Chalitza. What if the guy was a Kohen? He cannot marry a divorcee. Once she gets consecrated to somebody else, even if she wasn't allowed, the Kiddushin takes hold, it's tofes. And now he divorces her, now she's a divorcee. He's a Kohen, they cannot marry her. Teitzim min nazar beget, she must leave the stranger with a divorce, at least, so that the sinner shouldn't gain any profit. He shouldn't say, no, now you can stay with her. Anyways, you can't go back to the Yavam. The Yachalitz la Yevamah, and this Yavam should do Chalitza with the shoe to the Yevamah. Chav, Chazar Hazar, Shager Shamina Erusin, Unesa'a, Achar Shechalat la Yevamah. So the guy, okay, I don't have a picture of the guy, but let's imagine there's a guy over here. Okay, he's a strange guy. He consecrates this woman. Now we say, look, that's not allowed. If they give a get, he divorces her, he does Chalitza. Now he dissolved the bond with Chalitza, and she goes back and says, you know what, let's get married again. We don't force him out. We don't force her out. But if they had been divorced from a full marriage, in other words, she got married to this guy, he divorced her, did Chalitza from that guy, dissolve the bond, and now she wants to come back and marry this guy, If he goes back and marries her after the chalitza, we force her out. Because we compare this woman to a married woman who got married to somebody else and her first husband showed up. As we explained in the laws of divorce, she's forbidden to both husbands. And therefore, this woman too is like a guy. She gets married to somebody else. Her original husband, this guy, shows up. She's forbidden to both of them. What if a Yevamah only did promiscuous? She was a prostitute, not marriage of any kind. She does not become forbidden to the Yevamah. He can do whatever he wants. Chalitza or Yibum. Chaf Aleph. Why is it? Because the Torah says loisiya eshes hametz, no havaya, which means no proper marriage. But any other way of becoming somebody else's, even if it's just znut, is okay. Chaf Aleph kol Yevamah shehi safek midivreim. Im yesh aleha zikas yavam, ma'en aleha zikas yavam. Any woman who is in doubt whether she has a bond to the yavam or no bond, kigoy. Like the case we had yesterday at the end of the chapter. Yevamah sheyolda vlat. A woman who was pregnant at the time that her husband died. She gives birth to a baby who is not full term, and then he dies within 30 days, which we said biblically is viable, but rabbinically it's not. Which her law is to do chalitza, at least rabbinically, as we explained yesterday. If that woman, she's anyways even in doubt in this whole relationship, she goes and gets consecrated to another man before doing the chalitza, all we do is just carry through the chalitza and let her stay with her new husband, because anyway it's a doubt. What if the guy that she chooses to marry was a Kohen? And if you're going to let this chalitza go through, we're going to see later a Kohen cannot marry a woman who had chalitza done to her. Then here, very interesting case, the rabbis will move back their doubt. We're going to say you don't have to do chalitza. We're not going to forbid a man unto his wife just because of a rabbinic doubt. Of course, if this Kohen chooses to divorce her or he dies, she must do chalitza with this guy. And then she's going to be permitted initially to marry any other man because she's taken care of all the bonds. This Kohen divorced her or died, and this bond has been resolved by doing the chalitza.